The sea has always held an uncanny allure for me, its vast expanse both inviting and foreboding. My fascination with the ocean's mysteries led me to a small coastal town in search of stories about shipwrecks and lost souls. One particular wreck, the Starlight, caught my attention. It was an old, rusted vessel that met its tragic end over a century ago, taking with it the lives of many sailors. Locals whispered about the ghosts that haunted the ship, and I, driven by a mix of curiosity and skepticism, decided to explore it myself. The journey began on a foggy morning, the mist clinging to the coastline like a shroud. As I approached the harbor, an old fisherman, his face weathered by time and salt, warned me. "The Starlight isn't just another wreck," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "It's cursed. Those who go looking for its ghosts often find more than they bargained for." Ignoring his ominous words, I boarded a small boat, my equipment ready for the expedition. As I sailed towards the coordinates of the wreck, the weather began to change. The sky darkened, clouds rolling in like an angry wave. The sea grew choppy, and the air was thick with an impending storm. By the time I reached the site, the first raindrops had started to fall, and the wind howled through the rigging. I anchored the boat and prepared to dive. The descent into the cold, dark water was disorienting. Visibility was low, and the beam of my flashlight seemed to cut through nothingness. After what felt like an eternity, the silhouette of the Starlight emerged from the murky depths, a ghostly apparition on the ocean floor. Covered in barnacles and seaweed, it was both beautiful and eerie, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. I swam closer, my heart pounding in my chest. The ship's deck was littered with the remnants of its final voyage. Broken crates, scattered tools, and the skeletal remains of sailors who had met their doom. As I explored the vessel, a strange feeling of unease washed over me. It felt as though I was being watched, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me. I shook off the sensation and continued my search. Deeper into the ship, I found the captain's cabin. The door creaked open, revealing a room untouched by time. Maps and charts lay spread across a desk, and a journal, its pages yellowed and brittle, rested on top. I carefully opened it, the words inside telling a tale of a voyage gone horribly wrong. Storms, navigational errors, and whispers of mutiny had plagued the crew. The captain's final entry spoke of strange lights in the water and a sense of impending doom. As I read, a chill ran down my spine. The water around me seemed to grow colder, and the darkness deepened. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered, then died, plunging me into complete blackness. Panic set in, and I fumbled to turn it back on. Just as I succeeded, I caught sight of something moving out of the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Only the silent, empty cabin. Shaking off the fear, I decided it was time to head back. As I made my way to the exit, I heard a soft whisper, barely audible over the sound of my own breathing. "Help us," it seemed to say. My heart raced, and I swam faster, desperate to reach the surface. But the ship had other plans. A sudden force pulled me back as though invisible hands were grasping at me. I struggled, kicking and thrashing, until finally I broke free and swam as fast as I could to my boat. Gasping for air, I climbed aboard, the rain now pouring down in sheets. I glanced back at the water, half expecting to see ghostly figures rising from the depths. But there was nothing, only the churning sea. I sped back to the harbor, my mind racing with what I had experienced. The old fisherman was waiting for me, his eyes filled with a knowing sadness. "You saw them, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "The Starlight is a place of lost souls. Those who died there are trapped, unable to find peace. You've stirred their rest, and they won't let you go so easily." His words haunted me as I returned to my lodgings, unable to shake the feeling that I had brought something back with me. That night, my dreams were filled with visions of the ship and its ghostly crew. I woke up in a cold sweat, the whispers from the depths echoing in my mind. "Help us," they pleaded. I knew I couldn't ignore their cries. The next morning, I resolved to return to the Starlight, to uncover the truth and perhaps find a way to free the spirits trapped within its rusting hull. The following day, Armed with new determination and a sense of dread, I prepared for my second dive. The weather had cleared, but the foreboding feeling lingered. As I sailed back to the site, the sea was deceptively calm, the sun shining brightly overhead. But I knew better. The calm was merely a facade, hiding the darkness below. This time, as I descended into the depths, I felt a strange sense of familiarity, as though the ship was waiting for me. I reached the Starlight and was immediately struck by how different it seemed. The once quiet wreck now thrummed with an unnatural energy, and the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. I made my way back to the captain's cabin, hoping to find more clues in the journal. As I opened the cabin door, I froze. Standing in the room were the ghostly apparitions of the crew, their hollow eyes staring at me. Their translucent forms wavered, as though caught between this world and the next. The captain stepped forward, his voice a mere whisper. "You must help us," he said, his eyes pleading. "We are trapped, bound to this place by a curse. Only the living can break it." My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the gravity of the situation. These were not mere ghosts. They were souls in torment, seeking release. But how could I help them? What could break the curse that held them here? As I pondered these questions, a sudden realization struck me. The journal. It must contain the key. I reached for the journal, but before I could open it, a sudden jolt shook the ship. The spirits cried out, their forms flickering in and out of existence. "Hurry!" the captain urged. "The curse is awakening. You must find the answer before it's too late." With trembling hands, I opened the journal, flipping through the pages frantically. The final entry caught my eye. It spoke of a ritual, a way to appease the spirits and break the curse. But the details were vague, the instructions incomplete. I needed more time, but the ship seemed to be collapsing around me, the walls closing in. Desperate, I gathered the journal and prepared to leave. As I swam towards the exit, the spirits followed, their voices growing louder, more urgent. "Hurry! Help us!" they cried. I pushed myself to swim faster, my lungs burning as I raced against time. Just as I reached the surface, a powerful force pulled me back, dragging me down into the depths. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was the ghostly face of the captain, his eyes filled with a sorrow so deep it pierced my soul. "Don't leave us," he whispered, and then everything went black. When I awoke, I was lying on the deck of my boat, the journal clutched in my hand. The storm had passed, leaving the sea calm once more. But I knew my ordeal was far from over. The ghosts of the Starlight had made their plea, and I was the only one who could set them free. But how? The journal held the answer, but deciphering its cryptic messages would be no easy task. As I sailed back to the harbor, the weight of the journal in my hand felt like a lifeline and a burden. The spirits of the Starlight were counting on me, and I couldn't fail them. My journey was just beginning, and the real horror had yet to unfold. The next morning, I could hardly sleep, haunted by the spectral cries and the weight of their expectation. The journal lay on the table, its ancient pages a bridge between the living and the dead. I knew I had to understand its cryptic messages to break the curse and free the tormented souls of the Starlight. I spent hours poring over the journal, translating old nautical terms and trying to make sense of the fragmented ritual described. The captain's notes were scattered and incomplete, but a pattern began to emerge. The key seemed to lie in an ancient maritime rite, one that required specific items in a particular alignment of natural elements: sun, sea, and stone. The instructions mentioned a sacred place on the coast, a secluded cove known for its unique rock formations. This was where the ritual had to be performed. Gathering the necessary items, a piece of driftwood, a vial of seawater, and a fragment of the ship itself, I set off for the cove as the sun dipped below the horizon. The journey to the cove was eerie, the landscape shrouded in twilight. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. As I approached the beach, the rock formations loomed like ancient sentinels, their jagged shapes casting long shadows in the fading light. Setting up a small campfire, I arranged the items according to the instructions. The piece of driftwood, now a makeshift altar, held the vial of seawater and the fragment of the Starlight. I began to recite the incantation, the words feeling foreign and powerful on my tongue. The air grew colder, and the sea seemed to still, as though holding its breath. Suddenly, the fire flickered and roared to life, casting an otherworldly glow over the cove. The wind picked up, swirling around me, carrying faint whispers that grew louder, more insistent. The ground beneath me trembled and the sea surged forward, waves crashing against the rocks in a furious dance. A figure emerged from the shadows, the ghostly form of the captain. His eyes, filled with a mix of hope and despair, locked onto mine. "You have begun the ritual," he said, his voice echoing with ancient sorrow. "But the final step requires a sacrifice. A life for a life. Only then can we be free." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The ritual demanded a price I had not foreseen. My life, given willingly, in exchange for their eternal rest. The captain's gaze softened, as if sensing my turmoil. "We do not wish to harm you," he said, "but this is the only way. The curse binds us to this place, and only the living can break it." My mind raced, weighing the options. Could I give up my life to save these lost souls? The thought of becoming another ghostly figure, trapped forever, filled me with dread. But the faces of the crew, their eyes hollow with endless suffering, stirred something deep within me. Compassion, perhaps, or a sense of duty. As I stood there contemplating my fate, a new voice broke through the whispers. It was the old fisherman, his face pale and ghostly. "There is another way," he said, stepping forward. "A bond must be formed, not broken. The living and the dead must become one, sharing the burden of the curse." The captain looked at him, surprise and hope mingling in his expression. "Are you sure?" he asked. The fisherman nodded. "It is a dangerous path, but it can be done. The living must carry the memories of the dead, sharing their pain and their story. Only then can the curse be lifted." With a deep breath, I made my decision. "Tell me what to do," I said, my voice steady. The fisherman nodded and guided me through the final steps. I had to drink the seawater and burn the fragment of the Starlight in the fire, binding my spirit to theirs. As the ritual progressed, I felt a strange sensation, as though my soul was being pulled in two directions. The air around me shimmered, and the ghosts of the crew appeared, their forms becoming more solid, more real. The pain of their memories surged through me. Storms, despair, death, but also a deep sense of camaraderie and hope. Finally, the fire blazed one last time and then went out, leaving behind a profound silence. The ghosts stood before me, no longer bound by their tragic past. The captain stepped forward, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft. "You have freed us. We can finally rest." As the spirits faded into the night, a sense of peace settled over the cove. The sky cleared, revealing a blanket of stars, and the sea returned to its gentle rhythm. I knew I had changed, forever linked to the souls of the Starlight. Their memories were now a part of me, a burden I would carry, but also a testament to the power of compassion and sacrifice. Returning to the harbor, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. The old fisherman was waiting for me, his form now solid and real. "You did well," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Their story will live on through you." In the days that followed, I found a new purpose. I began to write, sharing the tale of the Starlight and its crew, hoping to honor their memory and warn others of the dangers that lurk beneath the waves. The whispers of the past had become a part of me, guiding my steps and shaping my future. The sea still calls to me, its depths filled with secrets and shadows. But now I know that even in the darkest waters, there is hope and redemption. The ghosts of the Starlight had found their peace, and in doing so, they had given me a new lease on life, a chance to tell their story and ensure they were never forgotten. As I sat by the shore watching the waves crash against the rocks, I felt a presence beside me. The captain's voice, no longer filled with sorrow, whispered in the wind. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." And with that, he was gone, leaving me with the echoes of a journey I would never forget.